Here, he's talking about what I mentioned regarding the importance of behavioral objectives in relation to the desired changes in learner behavior. I said this theoretically. Of course, here we are talking about the basic conditions that make goals SMART. SMART conditions are essential. What are the objectives? They should be specific with one behavioral action, as seen in our work, where a goal is a direct outcome of the educational experience. The learning outcome should facilitate learning, not the process itself. It should involve comparing, applying, doing something specific to achieve the goal within a time frame. Objectives are linked to academic weeks, implicitly present. Write measurable educational objectives. Guidelines help create trackable objectives like choosing action verbs wisely, evaluating educational objectives. The learning process of knowing how to study is not our concern. I aim to measure outcomes. It involves comparing, applying, and achieving goals within a time frame. I wanted to remind you of this moment. Not sure if you recall the objectives, which are the performance levels. I'm not sure if the performance level is written here or not, but here are also additional tips. You should write measurable educational objectives. This is something we've discussed, and there are guidelines that help in creating trackable educational training objectives, like choosing action verbs wisely. Evaluating educational objectives, just a moment from you. These are guidelines to create educational objectives. The objectives, which are the performance levels, I'm not sure if they're written here or not, but here are also additional tips. You should write measurable educational objectives. This is something we've discussed, and there are guidelines that help in creating trackable educational training objectives, like choosing action verbs wisely, evaluating educational objectives, just a moment from you. These are guidelines to create educational objectives. Sorry, I want to talk about, of course, the things in front of us are certainly considered guidelines, which are essentially that help you create educational objectives. Of course, what I've told you is more than enough regarding the topic of objectives. Of course, I told you here about the levels that exist in Bloom before. Of course, I just want to go back and see if there's something important. Here, we're talking about the objectives being completely SMART. We talked about that. There is no problem with it. Here, we're also talking about choosing action verbs and discussing them, evaluating the objectives, of course. Evaluating the objectives allows us to repurpose the learning goals. Take that. You might have written objectives before and then go back to evaluate them, so you can repurpose them. There might be slight effects on the objectives that could happen later. Refine objectives to focus on small units or topics. Determine online education level through Blackboard and the system, aligning with Bloom's levels. Micro-learning addresses the need to assess specific topics. Focus on small curriculum parts. Determine the level of online education. The teacher's level involves listing, analyzing, and classifying. Behavioral actions like recall and understanding. This is about determining the educational level. Our professor emphasizes the learner's ability to recall and organize information, distinguishing between them in analysis. Diversification in this matter is beneficial. The professor's level involves listing, analyzing, and classifying. This is his behavioral action level. Is it recall, understanding, or something else? What level am I reaching? There are 6 levels: recall, understanding, application, analysis, evaluation, and creativity. This falls under the 4th level, determining the educational level you want. When discussing our professor, who was formulating objectives, he focuses on the learner's ability to recall and organize information and distinguish between them in analysis. Diversification is beneficial. Plans are available. So all of this falls under the 4th category, which is determining the educational level or the level of education you want. Of course, when I come to our professor, the doctor who was formulating the objectives a while ago, we said he focuses on the learner's ability to recall information in the recall part, and also the ability to organize information and distinguish between them in the analysis. This is a good thing. We should diversify in this matter. Of course, it's available. I want to summarize this point. There are plans previously regarding the education strategy. Here's a tip. The teacher should plan ahead for the assessment strategy they will use in teaching. They need to determine how they will measure the objectives, meaning what the assessment will look like. It could be through observation or specific criteria. Will there be certain performances that will be observed? For example, will they ask them objective or essay questions? Will they require an essay or a research paper? Pre-planning assessments is linked to learners. Experts derive objectives from topics, creating content and questions to achieve these objectives. Criteria and past assessments clarify evaluation timing and frequency. Is the assessment once or multiple times, like in e-learning where you can test more than once? The expert discusses a subject, deriving behavioral objectives from content. He formulates questions to achieve these objectives. Pre-planning involves preparing questions and tests to meet goals. Criteria and previous assessments clarify when and how often learners are evaluated. Is the assessment once or multiple times? Will questions be in one or several formats? How can learners be classified? Will they be in one group with the same questions or divided into several groups? These criteria relate to online education. There's much to learn. These objectives determine criteria to clarify evaluation timing and frequency to ensure objectives are met. Is the assessment done once or multiple times? Will questions be in one format or several? How can you classify learners? Will they be in one group with the same questions or divided into multiple groups? We learn from objectives linked to values. We share learning objectives using common methods like upcoming objective formulation. Present educational objectives with keywords in material like topics. Will it be in one format or several? How can you classify learners? Will they be in one group with the same questions or divided into multiple groups? These are criteria related to online education or platforms like Blackboard. We learn a lot from this with clear objectives. Objectives linked to values. We have methods to share learning objectives. Using the upcoming objective formulation is common. We present educational objectives with keywords found in the material like topics. They might list things or explain. There are several methods we can use to share learning objectives with the learners. We can use the upcoming objective formulation. We can present objectives with keywords. They might list things or explain concepts. I can attach approved video clips to clarify objectives. I might use a variety of formulations. Add motivational phrases to encourage goal achievement. Motivation is low, but studies show motivating learners helps achieve goals quickly. And it explains various things. Sometimes wording isn't enough. I use different formulations. I add motivational phrases. To encourage goal achievement, schools say to formulate a good objective, motivate the learner. Motivation is low, but studies show motivating learners with objectives helps achieve goals faster. Using video is crucial. Intro or summary videos on objectives help at lesson start. This yields results. We rarely use this method. We use videos explaining course material. Content is rarely used. Only in rare cases am I allowed to present it. In order to formulate a good goal, motivate the learner to achieve it. This is motivation. I came to number 3 because it is the most used in our formulation. Motivation is always very little, but all studies have agreed that motivating learners, while presenting educational goals to them, helps to achieve the goals faster. Of course, using video is very important. It really helps when you have an introductory or summarizing video about the educational objectives at the beginning of the lesson. This also yields some results. We don't usually use this method. We use videos, for example, explaining how to use the course material. As for the content, we rarely use it, only in very rare cases do they allow me to present it to you. Now, when we come back to the course, let's say this course, we used video in it, and we used the topic of the video almost as the last one, so let's take a look at that. So, it's really important when we come back to the course. Let's say this course, we used video in it, and we used the topic of the video almost as the last one. So let's take a look at that.